Hello, thank you so much for joining us on today's podcast. We're going to be talking all about the world of being self-employed. Joining me today is Emilia. Hello.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you, Emilia?
I'm great, thank you.
Would you mind just giving us, firstly, introducing yourself and also giving us a rundown of your job title?
Yes, so I'm Emilia. I am freelance self-employed brand and content consultant. I have been doing this for 11 working days, so I'm super fresh to the self-employed life. Previously, I have worked as a graphic designer, as a senior art worker for 10 years, and my most recent role is as brand manager at Cakesmiths, which is in Bristol. I worked my way up there. I started off as like a hybrid designer because I knew I wanted to make the transition out of creative agency design work. I knew that I was a lot more of like a project thinker and wasn't more of like a concept person, which is obviously kind of normally what you need to get to the top end creative director positions in agencies. And I knew that was never going to be me. And in lockdown, I started a quite successful food Instagram and kind of broke through that way and taught myself lots of marketing skills. So when the job came up at Cakesmiths, I decided to say goodbye to my senior art worker life and I became the in-house designer at Cakesmiths. I got 3 promotions in 2 years and ended up quitting when I was the brand manager there, which was incredible. I loved my time there. So now time to the juicy bit.
Yeah, your Instagram is amazing because I had a little stalk and oh my gosh, the food content is
I've definitely tried to like transition more recently, like obviously since I have become a official brand and content consultant, I'm trying to like dip my toe into more of like showing people exactly what they should be doing, because the whole reason I'm doing this is because I have been so successful and done it for multiple businesses kind of in the background, and now I'm totally putting myself out there like, this is what you should be doing. I don't want to gatekeep any knowledge. I want to help people. Hopefully they'll become my clients. If not, in the future they'll become my clients. Yes. So obviously I was the brand manager at Cakesmiths, and previously, like, I've done so much work freelance for lots of different businesses in Bristol and beyond. So when I was at Cakesmiths, I moonlighted and did a lot of freelancing outside of my 8 till 5. My boss, who is now my mentor, he is incredible. He always pushed me into doing as much freelance work as I could while still having a work-life balance. If I wanted to do it, if I took pleasure in it, he was always under the kind of thought that it would pay off for him as well. He would gain extra skills from me that I would bring to the business. Like, it was fine. I would do a lot of freelancing on my lunch break, like go out and do food shoots for other businesses. So I did loads of freelancing across Bristol, got to know lots of like food vendors, design agencies that needed extra help, that sort of thing. And then a couple of months ago, I was approached by a company and they offered me a position. I was headhunted. I didn't apply for the job. To come in and do some brand work similar to what I do at Cakesmiths. I actually ended up turning down the job. I didn't think it was right at the time. Wasn't really sure. It was for like a different industry to what I'm in, less stable, like a startup. So I wasn't really sure. Like, Cakesmiths is very stable. They do really well. They're an incredible business. They've got so many good stages within the business that keep it working really well. The possibilities for the future are endless for them as a wholesale cake business, especially with the way the country's looking in terms of hospitality businesses. A lot of people can't afford to turn ovens on in cafes. They're going to have business, so they're a great alternative. Got approached by another business, offered a job, I turned it down. And then a couple of months later, their brand director left. So I was really like, oh, okay. They approached me and they said, our brand director's left. We'd love to have you if you can kind of take on that role. I wasn't quite there yet. I was only the brand manager at Cakesmiths for like a few months, even though I was operating as it before. So I accepted the job role, worked my notice period like most people do, and then thought I'll have 2 weeks off. We were going to go on holiday, me and my partner, and on my first day on my holiday, they called me. They texted me, the CEO of the business, and was like, oh, hi, can we have a chat this morning? I was like, absolutely. I thought that because it was bang on 2 weeks before my start date, oh yeah, I'd love to like have a chat. Maybe he's just going to do some onboarding things, 2 weeks out. And he just said it was bad news and he was making most people redundant in the business and that he was pulling my job role. Obviously, that was a massive shock.
Yeah, 2 weeks notice.
I have literally worked for a business, like a salary job since I was 15. Like even when I went to uni, like most people like quit their jobs and they did go on like student grants or student loans. Like I've always been like petrified of that stability being taken away from me. Like I kept my job in Bristol when I went to uni in Cardiff, and then to be honest, I kept on coming back. I always planned on getting another job, but I just always came back for work sort of thing. So I've always been constantly employed. So I felt like the carpet had been pulled from me.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so it's just, yeah, it wasn't great. Obviously, I was like in a bit of shock about the whole situation because I loved my job at Cake Smiths. I had also recruited for my own role, so I knew it was already done. Like, that sort of thing. I knew I couldn't just go back because they couldn't do to me what someone else had done to me. You know, it's not fair. Yes, and then my partner is a businessman and he has 2 businesses, and he just said to me, look, don't feel sorry for yourself. You've done all the work. You couldn't go it alone. Like whenever I'd have previous like spats where I'd think like, oh God, I'm really working like extra time and maybe other people aren't doing the same amount of work as me, like no matter what part of my career I was at, you know, in the last 13 years, you know, he was like, you can do it on your own. You always said you could. Like now is the time. Like you don't really have another option. Yes. So that is where I'm at now. And now I'm 11 days into being self-employed. And I love it. And I felt like I really teed myself up for this without even realising all my extra, probably non-work-life balance in terms of doing things outside of work, lunch breaks, weekends work. Like all my friends always say, oh my God, you work so hard. You work like 6 to 7 days a week. It definitely was a positive when this all happened, because when I launched my kind of freelance consultancy options on my Instagram and said that I was doing it, and if you want to work with me, like reach out, I literally had so many people reach out to me. Wow. Which is incredible. And I've nailed down like lots of like long-term contracts, like account management and just like weekly work that's guaranteed. Cake Smiths, I still work for them. I work for them every Monday. Like they're fabulous. They straight away wanted me back to do all their photography.
Amazing.
Yes. Yeah. Well, it's turned out really well, really.
Yeah, no, I was thinking that must have been absolutely terrifying.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Your head and just thinking, oh, what are we going to do that?
The funny thing is that when I actually think back now, that actually isn't even terrifying. What terrifies me now is knowing that I was kind of willing to go to another business and spend that like probably like 2 years, I would say, where you start in a business, you want to do really well, prove yourself, especially for like the initial 3 months, you know, so you don't get fired.
Yeah.
For your probation.
Yeah.
But then you spend like, say, 2 years after that really going after the career climb. And I was always that person. That's why I've had promotions and things like that within roles.
Incredible, yeah.
And it actually scares me that I was willing to do that for another 2-3 years until I'd get bored because I wasn't getting the promotions I wanted. And then I'd think, do you know what? I could do this at another business and I'd do the exact same thing again. So yeah, I think that actually in hindsight, that scares me more that I was willing to do that. Whereas now, all I have to do is learn and be really good at what I know I'm great at and what I've proved myself to be good at already for years. So that's really good.
It sounds like you can really kind of reap the rewards of your own hard work. Could you talk us through some more big differences between working for yourself versus being on a contract?
So I definitely think that obviously it goes without saying you get back what you put in. I've instantly implemented like a massive routine. Like I'm always a morning person, like I always have been. So I want to start as early as possible. So like I'd get up every morning now at 6 a.m. Probably before that, I would get up, say 7 and get into work when I had to go into work sort of thing. Now I'm like, right, I need to do all of this before say midday, and then I can work on a project in the afternoon. And then I also think now, like, you know, unless I have plans on an evening, or because my partner is a barber, he works a lot later than I do, like for social hours for clients. I also think I might as well just work until he gets home, because all we're going to do is like have dinner and watch TV or whatever. So I just think I might as well just work longer, because in theory I can get more done, I can have more clients, my clients will be happier, I can get a better output, I can think of new ideas and plan shoots and get to things with more of an agenda. So I just feel like, yeah, it's definitely, in terms of time, I feel like when you're working for yourself, you just think, what else can I do to set myself above, you know, if they're using in-house people, because some of my clients have in-house marketing teams, that sort of thing, and then they want to outsource just to test.
Right.
So it's like, I want to show them, you know, sometimes freelancers, for example, might work harder because there's more of a risk. So you always have to put your best foot forward every single day. And because I've previously worked in design agencies, like most people that have worked in design agencies, half the staff there are freelance, say, because of workloads at different times, that sort of thing. And they're always like the ones that every single day, you know, you won't see them getting involved in chats and that sort of stuff as much, because they're always like, I could get cut tomorrow. And obviously that's a hard stance to be at. But one of the reasons why I thought, you know what, I can do this freelance thing is because in previous roles, I've always like got to the like point where I think, oh my God, I care so much more than other people in this business. Like, you know, even prior, I would work like late sometimes, and I'm thinking, well, some people get off early, and I know that they're just not doing what they should be. Like, it's obviously a totally different story. Like, I just think like you shouldn't have to work late if you're doing the workload, and especially if you're going above and beyond in the time. But, you know, I found it really hard when I was going above and beyond to climb the career ladder. But then there was people at the top that were kind of like lucky and were right place, right time, but weren't even doing the work now. So that was always like a problem for me.
You find it hard potentially to hit the off switch. How do you get a work-life balance working for yourself?
Yeah, I absolutely find it hard to hit the off switch. But funnily enough, it's kind of like the reason why I'm doing what I do now in terms of content is because of my original love of food. Like, I've always been obsessed with food, and it's funnily enough, I'm now working in primarily food content creation. Probably about 50% of my clients are in the food business, which is great. It's always what I wanted. But my off switch is definitely like, right, I need to cook dinner now. And that'll totally turn it off, which is so weird because in theory, I'm doing another version of that. And half the time I film it all, like step by step. And I'm like, well, do you know what? Because I've got like a list on my phone of all the content I have on my phone. Every time I film something, I'm like, that could be used for this reel or this TikTok. Yeah. And then I think, do you know what? I'll cook dinner, and then I can actually totally switch off.
And talk us through, because you mentioned filming stuff for social media.
Yes.
How important is social media as a freelancer?
Oh, well, obviously, because half of it's obviously the business I'm actually in now.
Yeah.
But the other half is just like insane. It's totally changed like the marketing world. I think you're absolutely living under a rock if you don't think it is. Like previously, obviously I've been a designer, and famously designers and like marketing departments don't get on. So I kind of have both perspectives, which is fantastic. Like, I totally see both. In the pandemic, when I started my food Instagram, I was working at a design agency, and we were all on furlough. And then they unfortunately had to make a lot of people redundant, like a lot of businesses had to. And we all kind of got put up for like a redundancy notice, and you kind of had to bid for your own job and prove why you should be cut, sort of thing, which is super, super like daunting. And especially for me, knowing at the time I was a senior art worker, but the only other art worker in the business was more senior than me. He'd been there longer. He would have had more it would be easier to cut me because he would have had to have been paid off more, that sort of, because we'd all been there for over 2 years. And so I had to prove why should be kept. And I knew that he was probably always going to be kept, sort of thing. And so I was kind of going up against the other designers, and I thought, do you know what? This company has a marketing department, but they're not doing anything on socials. And when they are, it's just incorrect. Like, especially a few years ago when it was just like a no-go to put text on like carousel posts, like still posts on Instagram. Now it's totally changed because of like calls to action, that sort of stuff. But like, say 4 years ago, it was like like if you were putting text on socials, it's like no one's reading this, hun.
Yeah.
But So yeah, I basically bidded for my own job and was like, I can transition to do socials for you. And I went back literally straight. I not only didn't get made redundant, but I got took off furlough and went back, which was great because I actually had a life again.
Yeah.
I'm such a career person and it was nice to just get back. But I taught I taught their marketing department how to use socials effectively for the current climate, for even their customers that was B2B. Whereas they obviously had people that were super like high level, like they had a CMO, they had like a marketing manager. I'd never worked in marketing at that point and they just didn't know any of this.
Wow.
And they just weren't implementing it. They weren't really doing like paid ads. They weren't doing any networking like digitally. Yeah, then it kind of grew from there. And then I got another job at another agency and I kind of did the same thing. So I was a senior designer there and they didn't have a marketing department. And I was like, you don't need one, I don't think at the moment. For certain businesses, it's just not necessarily when you've got an amazing customer base. So I said to them, I can do your socials whilst being a designer in the agency because there wasn't kind of no working from home there. So I was always there. So I thought, do you know what, I can do their socials, totally transform their socials, considering they were like a business to business and they had enough, they were like always running at capacity customers wise.
Wow.
I was able to get like, I think I doubled their follower count and people were ringing them from week one, like who's doing your socials, what agency. But the reason I was doing it so well was because I actually knew what they sold.
Yeah.
Whereas people had approached them before and wanted to charge them loads and things like that, but they wouldn't have ever done that well because they didn't know the business. They didn't know what they should have sold or what they should highlight and what people actually want. And then that's exactly why at the moment I'm kind of tailoring my account management to one of my USPs that I'm given every single account that I kind of bid for or people approach me about is I create for them a Bible of like frequently asked questions on socials so that I can build that as I learn with them. And then they can all totally step back from their account.
Right.
And I will know all the information because obviously it's super easy to outsource an account if you've got the cash. But people in agencies and social media, like businesses, they won't make the effort in theory to learn about your business. And you can never sell a business if you don't really know what you're selling. And I think that's kind of the wrong stance to go up against it that a lot of people do. And this is why individual content creators are doing so well because they really see the owner of the business and what they do. And that's the reason why they get the account in the first place.
That's so interesting. And it seems like you're really good at selling products, but you're also really good at selling yourself to people.
Yeah.
Do you have, obviously I don't want you to give out like loads of advice for free because that's your business, but do you have maybe one pointer that you would give to people who are transitioning into the freelance life? So one thing they can do to maybe market themselves?
Well, saying that, I actually feel like obviously in this, like the cost of living crisis, like a lot of people can't afford to outsource content. And that is one of the things I offer. So I offer 3 different types of services. The first one is one-to-one coaching. So you can just do a one-off and I will literally teach you like really good tips and tricks that I know that you can easily implement without having a huge marketing strategy around you. And then I also offer like short term. So I can work with you a one-off or once a month, that sort of thing, and then help you change your content, change your strategy, and then I do long-term account management, like I said. Going back to how I can help individual businesses, I definitely think that the content world is so saturated, which is a kind of what you want to hear from someone that's just gone into it themselves. One thing I definitely think that all businesses should be doing that's super easy to implement, this doesn't cost a penny, is that you need to make sure that all your content that you put out there has value to the customer that you want to appeal to. Don't worry about going viral. It's becoming harder and harder to go viral. Like, people are lying to you if they say that isn't the case. But also, people that go viral are finding it easier and easier. So you've got to separate yourself from those two things and think, right, who is the customer that I want to get? How can I get them? So for example, if you are a local business that doesn't ship across the country, you need to look at all the local people and how you can appeal to them. it doesn't matter about going viral if you can't ship your orders, say, if that isn't the way your business runs. So as long as you are thinking about every time you make a piece of content, you know, a funny reel, a informative carousel, you need to make sure that some part of that gives value or promotes your service and why someone needs it, versus like, this is great, this is my product, this is why I love it. You need to say, this is why you need it.
That's so interesting, because I guess this sort of fighting your instinct of what you think should go on the internet.
And you've got to think, like, most content agencies say they're promoting a product that they know will already sell.
Right.
So all these small businesses, they still need to prove why you should buy it. It's a totally different scenario.
Have you had any nightmare situations working for yourself yet in your 11 days? I know that's already quite soon.
So I actually lost a client that was a long term. So like I said to you guys, I obviously freelanced outside of my 8 to 5. So I already had clients, and this is one of the reasons why my partner said to me, you know what, you can do it, like it will be fine, because I had some backup, and I knew people that needed work. I kind of knew, but one of my long-term clients, I actually had to tell him this whole story.
Right.
So basically what happened was I wanted to have a check-in with him because I knew I'd have more time to do more work for them, and I was obviously looking for new clients, that sort of thing. And I never announced my new role, luckily, so I had to obviously tell certain people that I had told, but never say it kind of publicly until now. And so I had to tell him. He knew that I was changing roles, because I said to him, you know, I'm away for 2.5 weeks. You don't normally do that when you work in a business. And then I'll be back and let's have a catch up. And I obviously had to tell him what had happened. And at that point, he was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. But I think we're going to go in a different direction with content, and we're going to move it back to in-house. And obviously I was totally gutted, but I literally said straight away, oh, that's absolutely fine. Like, I totally agree why. Because like I said earlier, some people do need content created by someone that's in-house all of the time. And that's why it works. Like, it's totally different for different businesses. I normally say, like, for people that sell a product in terms of like the same product all the time, like food businesses, you can have someone that comes in once a month or once a week, say, that photographs a menu or a product or a service that you do week in, week out. But if something's changing every single day, if you're a business that's scaled to a wider industry, in theory, you need someone there all the time. So I was like, that's absolutely fine. And, you know, it wasn't any bad blood at all. Like, we spoke about it, and, you know, he said that he'd love to use me in the future for ad hoc stuff, for launches. And I was like, do you know what? That's all good. That is my only nightmare so far. So I think I've been pretty good. I also feel like a lot of podcasts are about, you know, the how to fail trend. And I never really got that, because I was always like, I'm quite a positive person and I'm always trying to ensure that I don't fail, literally until I feel like I totally failed this time around. But it brought me to this, where I felt like I am thriving. And like I said, like I feel like, oh God, I should have done this sooner. And I'm so glad I'm where I am now.
Do you think you ever would have ended up here if you hadn't had that?
No. So
really? Wow.
You know, obviously everyone's different, but pretty much everyone that I've spoke to, this freelance or owns their own business, it's either someone in their family is self-employed or freelance, so that's why they've done it and found it easier. But probably 90% of the people I speak to that I've said, like, well, how are you doing this? Is always because of something like that. Like, because they've either been made redundant or, you know, they've been forced into it. I previously met up with a new client of mine. I obviously was testing the waters with them, thinking, should I go freelance a few months ago? And she was really incredible, you know, really being like, you know, your work ethic is great. You 100% will thrive being freelance. And then obviously I got offered the role that I was originally going to go into. And then I kind of left it at that. And then obviously since everything happened, she was one of the first people I called, and I said, like, look, are you looking for anyone? I'd love to work with you. And obviously I had to tell her again what had happened. And she was like, oh my God, I am absolutely buzzing that you're freelance. Like, I was gutted that you were going to go back into a salaried job, because I just thought I really wanted you. I thought you'd fit really well on her team. She actually primarily, so she has a marketing agency, and she only hires freelancers, because she just says, like, you know, sometimes there's a lot of work, sometimes there's not much work, and you can just divvy it out in between. And freelancers really tend to put their all in. Like I said earlier, obviously it's different for different people. I was only in a salary job last month, and I was still operating the same. But, you know, you're always putting more and more effort in, because you always want that repeat booking.
It's just interesting what you're saying about freelancers giving that all, because your job is social media.
Yeah.
I was thinking about the work-life balance.
Oh, I don't ever switch off.
Yeah. I was going to say, do you have a personal account and a work account?
So I actually have 2 phones.
Ah, I see.
And I'm on my, so obviously both are kind of for work. The reason I bought the original, a contract ran out on one, I thought I'll buy another phone. Obviously nowadays you don't need to have a SIM card to work a phone. So I thought I'll keep the other one without a SIM card. The camera's better, that sort of thing. That's why I originally bought it. It would also work for, say, if I want to film something and also like reply to emails, and, you know, so I don't have to change my setup. So I thought that would really work. So on my second phone that I film content on, that has a way better camera, I'm logged into my client's accounts. And normally, say after 7 p.m. on an evening, I'll leave my phone in the other room, normally charge in for the next day, upstairs, that sort of thing. And then if I go out, I'll tend to, unless I'm going out to shoot content, I'll just leave my phone at home. And that's definitely how I have some form of work-life balance. But at the end of the day, because I love food, and food's such a big part of everyone's lives, I'm always going to be that person that's taken a food photo at a restaurant. Like, I'll never ever change that. The only difference is that pretty much, unless I'm getting paid for a food shoot, I won't take my actual professional big DSLR. And believe me, I've tried, but my boyfriend hates it, because I also have like it almost looks like a tablet, but it is like a flash, like a portable flash device. And I've took that so many times, like dark and dingy, like moody restaurants that are almost like for date night, and we'll be like probably going out for like an advert in exchange for like a library of content.
Right, I see.
Which is great, great deal. And then we'll all be dressed up, looking nice, ready to have a lovely meal, and I'll just whack out my massive flash and everyone stares at me, and my boyfriend's like, this is so embarrassing. So that is where I draw the line. I don't do that anymore. Unless I'm actually going there for like a library photo shoot, which most instances I go alone because that's work. I will always just take my normal phone and take some nice food photos just to show my friends and put up on my now work Instagram. But then half the time I label it as like, you know, this is my switching off time sort of thing. I always as well try to, on a Sunday, have like total downtime from it, to also let my stories lapse as well, so that on a Monday I've got like a fresh stories sheet, because apparently that fits well with the algorithm as well.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
really?
it's a little tip I'm kind of trialing at the moment.
Yeah.
So if you're not having much engagement all of a sudden, people say to let your stories lapse out. So then when you start promoting something, or, you know, it's Monday, this is all the stuff I've shot on the weekend, you start with all your stories, and then it's the first one is actually the beginning of the story. You tend to jump a bit more in the algorithm and get more views.
That's so interesting.
Tip at the middle.
So the algorithm is rewarding you resting.
Yeah, so it does a bit. Yeah, because obviously, you know, the algorithm also knows that if you're constantly putting out loads and loads of content, then there's no difference.
Right, I see.
I would say.
Yeah.
So you kind of need to show like waves of putting lots out there and not so much out there. You know, I would absolutely tell all my clients that you need to be posting like 4 times a week minimum. But I do think to let your stories lapse, because a lot of people are just reposting stories and things like that from customers and things, and that isn't going to engage your viewers. Like, you want to show them exciting content, again, that has value.
And thinking of the algorithm, how do you find taking a holiday? So if you had like a week off, because obviously the algorithm is probably panicking and thinking, where are you? You've not posted anything. How do you handle that situation?
So obviously when I was on holiday previously that I spoke about, I actually spent, I think I had 2 days off before my holiday, obviously when I'd finished my job at Kate Smith's, and I scheduled 2 whole weeks of content. Obviously, I did all my clients and I did my own account. So then I was constantly posting. Yeah. I don't think you don't necessarily need to do it, but I was really on a roll at that point. I thought, yeah, I'll do that. But when that happened, obviously, and I was panicked about what am I going to do, because I didn't take my laptop away with me, because why would I? I'm on holiday.
Yeah.
I thought, oh my God, I need clients, I need content. And I ended up spending so much time on my phone, which I absolutely would not recommend. And about a week into the holiday, I really realised how much time I was spending on my phone. And I just thought, this is not worth it. And one thing I do actually do, and I continued then, even though I was on my phone and I'd scheduled content, is that when I'm on holiday, and I've done this for the last few months, is that I don't actually post up when I'm on my holiday, live.
I see.
And it actually I personally find that I get a lot better results from it. And then I'll almost do a highlight reel, because at the end of the day, Instagram is a highlight reel. And when you're on holiday, you want to show everything, and a lot of people want to show every drink and this and that, but it does just get boring for your viewers. And, especially if it's, your business or your audience doesn't know you to be on holiday all the time. So it's a completely change of content, and it can get boring, especially if you're on a 2-week holiday, even a 1 week, every day, people are at home thinking, oh God, I wish I was on holiday. It can almost be negative. So I also would recommend to people to do a highlight for one day at the end of your holiday and put together all the lovely bits, whether that's no matter what industry that is in. So in terms of if you have a food business and you're going away on a research trip, it's really good to do a highlight at the end of everything that you've learned, because some of the stuff you've learned might be crap, or you could think something was really good in the beginning and then halfway through something can be amazing, and then you can not put in as much effort because you're a bit burnt out in terms of content.
So it always needs that editing process.
Yeah, I think sometimes you have to sometimes you have to sit back and think, is this actually interesting? Because you can think it's interesting because it's a new thing for you, but people won't necessarily even find it that interesting. But then sometimes you can realise that people find something that's so interesting that you find pretty boring. So it's really good to look at that and see how many views you're getting on certain things, and kind of, self-edit to the point where it's still authentic to you, but it's going to feed your audience better.
I'm interested in what you said about Instagram being a highlight reel. Do you think that is also true in terms of being self-employed? Do you think it's quite easy to look at people on social media and think, oh, you're killing it, you're doing amazing, and then there's actually another side to it?
100%. But I actually feel people really love to drum into content creators, and when you're trying to show people how is the best way to create content, that you should have a niche. And I definitely think that's true. Millions of people have based content strategies around that, but I also think that sometimes your niche is your work. For example, I feel my engagement is so high at the moment because people are really interested in this journey that I'm talking about now, which is great. But my niche at the moment is talking about this, which is such a variety. And a really good instance of that is, I know we said we were going to talk about it, Grace Beverly. I've actually got her diary now, the planner. And so she obviously is an amazing businesswoman, and she always shows every side of the business, when she's stressed, when she's going out to do really amazing things. And it's so inspirational to see it's not always just sunshine and rainbows. And I sometimes feel when I've put up stories, when I do a daily schedule and show my followers, my friends, everyone, people love it. And then sometimes I've wrote, that I'm going to do a job until 6 p.m. and I'm doing it until 9 p.m, say. And I'm oh my God, time's gone so fast. I get so many people write to me oh my God, I thought it was just me today, that sort of thing. And so that really makes people realize that you're actually human, because you could be performing really high and getting all these things done, and some people just aren't like that. And I could totally look at myself sometimes and be who are you? You don't need to be doing all these things and proving it to everyone all of the time. And everyone has burnout moments, unfortunately, some worse than others, but sometimes you just have to totally step back and be is this actually worth it? Am I doing this for a good reason, in terms of, am I working late because it's worth it? Could I just do this tomorrow with a fresh brain and actually think, do you know what, I could get better results from this?
Do you have a practical set of steps that you take when you feel you're about to burn out? Are there things that you do?
My big thing is like sleep. Like I'm a big sleeper. Like I love sleep. It's so important. So I do not understand some people that just don't need to sleep. My friend just opened a business in Bristol called Catley's, which is an amazing bakery, and typical baker, she can just sleep 2 hours a night and just get on with it. Like obviously she's tired, she'll say she's tired, that sort of thing. I would be an absolute zombie. So my thing is like rest. So I've always been like a very like chatty, happy person, and luckily since I've always worked in like creative industries, I feel like it's always been totally acceptable to like talk in the office. It's quite social, that sort of thing, versus other industries. I've always found that a lot of my colleagues have become friends. So I'm very like extroverted, as you can tell, in terms of like the workplace. That's how I get clients. That's how I sell things, that sort of thing. But because of that, when I get home, I just want to be alone in silence.
Oh, I understand that.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Like, you know, if you talk all day, you just want to be silent on the night. And people find that so weird when I say that to people, like, you know, when people say, oh, what are you doing this weekend? And because I'm always like out, you know, at restaurants trying like lovely food, you know, I want to go to the newest launch. I want to see this. I want to go and see my client. I want to like take a Instagram video about me talking about my day. But then it goes to the other side and people say, what are you doing on the weekend? And I'm like, oh, I'm just going to sit at home all day with my dog and like hopefully not see anyone at all. And that's just like totally two ends of the spectrum. But that is definitely how I kind of relax. Obviously, everyone's different. I just like to be alone.
I get it though, because it's when you're trying to sell yourself, you're putting so much energy outwards and you're thinking about how am I coming across? Am I making enough connections? And if you're trying to work a room and put your best foot forward every day, I can imagine.
Yeah,
you just sort of tell that.
Like, I'm more than happy to be like the loud, friendly person, but obviously that's just like you just can't keep that up all of the time. And I do try and make sure that, you know, half of my week is like admin downtime at home. I'd never really, even prior to the pandemic, I worked in an agency where you could do half work from home, kind of flexi. So that it was kind of no change when the pandemic hit in terms of, you know, when everyone eventually went back to work. Like I knew exactly what worked best for me. And even now, like I will try and be with clients or be in like coffee shops and that sort of things, working at least 3 days a week. And then 2 days I need to be like totally shut off alone sort of thing.
Just to read.
Yeah, 100%.
Now, just to wrap up, I've got one more question for you. What's one thing that you wish you'd known at the start of this journey into being self-employed that you know now?
I actually wrote down a quote.
Oh, it
really works really well.
The Grace Beverley diary.
I've done a quote. I wrote down a couple about 6 months ago when I was like, oh, do you know what? I'm working really hard. I feel like, you know, there's other jobs on the market that I feel like would be better suited to me, that sort of thing. So, and it's totally translated all the way through, but doubt can only be removed from action. So that's totally me all over. And I think that's probably the best advice I could personally give anyone is that, you know, you have just got to make the most out of a bad situation sometimes. And, you know, sitting around and dwelling on something isn't going to change anything. I really could have, and I chose not to. And I, you know, maybe my partner would have said different. But I think that, you know, you just got to really evaluate all the cards on the table and think, right, what are the pros and cons here? What is the best next stage? And then everything will just fall into place. You know, I'll look back a month ago, I'm sure in a year's time, I hope that I'll look back and think, oh my God, what was I worried about? Because now I don't even feel worried anymore. I feel so excited for the future, so excited for all the new connections I've made, the future connections I'm going to make. But I probably am mildly nervous now. And in a year, I'll feel like, oh my God, you were lying to everyone that first month then, you know?
I think you're incredibly brave though, because that sounded absolutely terrifying. And you just jumped in, felt the fear.
Yeah.
Got on with it. Incredible.
Yeah, I'm really excited. And like I said, like, I think that where a lot of us are taught to, you know, always work for someone and that's like the safe bet. But I was speaking to actually the CEO of Cakesmiths today, and I said to him, realistically, obviously, you know, when you're in a salaried job, there's protection there in terms of like contracts, you know, because of most of the workforce in the UK are salaried sort of thing. But when you think about it, being freelance is actually a lot more stable if you build up loads and loads of clients. You know, if one of them leaves you, you've still got 99 more or whatever. So in theory, that is a lot more stable way of working that isn't promoted in society, and we're not really taught, especially me. Like, none of my family are self-employed or have ever been freelance. Like, everyone's really excited for the journey, but people are like, oh my God, it's such a jump. But now I think, do you know what? It actually is a lot safer because I know I'm great at what I do. I know that I'll put all the effort in.
This sounds brilliant. And all that's left to do is for you to plug your business, please. Where can we find you?
So you can find me on The Food at Hand on Instagram. My website, thefoodathand.com, is coming soon.
Amazing. Emilia, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been absolutely fascinating hearing your
insight. I enjoyed it so much.
Amazing story. Thank you.
Yeah.